I'd like to introduce to you folks Leslie Rogers. She lives to spread healthy living habits and ways to care for our earth. In Leslie's experience, a lack of education and understanding of sustainable practices creates barriers to living consciously. She aims to change this as a education director at Atlas Organics. It's a commercial composting company based in the upstate of SC. And by running the Atlas residential program, Compost House, Leslie's passion stemmed from being a mother, her work with community gardens and local sustainable organizations, first in Brooklyn, New York, and now here in the upstate. And Leslie told me she's been doing this for about 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Should I lower this a little bit? Yeah? Without breaking it?
Sticky.
There. Thank you. Perfect. So yes, I'm here to talk about diversion, regeneration, and awareness. So at Atlas Organics, our main focus is to recycle food waste. That's all we do. We do it 6 days a week, almost 24 hours a day. And we do this to make compost. Landfills are a huge, huge area of our society that we just don't see. Out of sight, out of mind problems. And they are growing. They're growing tremendously. They are negative for our environment. They have so many different physical and environmental footprints that are just do not benefit our health. So our goal is to get that compostable waste out of the landfill. Down at the bottom, which you can't see, it says, according to DHEC, South Carolina DHEC, 1 in 4 pieces of garbage is compostable. So Atlas Organics is here truly to address that need. Food can sit in the landfill for decades. You know, there have been research teams that have found 15-year-old newspapers that they can still read. Grass clippings, 15-year-old grass clippings that were still green. Another team found a 30-year-old hot dog, completely intact and recognizable. So, yeah, exactly. So, basically, what happens in the landfill is that between the plastic and the weight of the different layers, microorganisms and oxygen cannot get in the pile. And so it just sits there. So our goal is to really get that material out of the landfill because it is such an essential element for rebuilding our soil, which is where regeneration comes in. Now, Don't Waste Food South Carolina is a DHEC initiative. By 2030, South Carolina has the goal of cutting its compostable waste in half. So the first part of that is prevention, making better choices with what we use, being more responsible for our impact and our participation in terms of waste in our community. 2 is donate. So if there is a human being or an animal that can benefit from the food waste that you don't need, that's the second tier. We want to find that human or animal that could benefit from that nutrition. After all those avenues are exhausted, we want that material in a compost pile. Because if it's in a compost pile, then it's going to give those nutrients and that organic matter to the soil. So if you can, I don't know if you can see some of the little blurbs up here, but food waste is the number 1 thing thrown away in our country. The number 1. So it is a major, major issue in terms of what our waste is. Throwing away an egg wastes 55 gallons of fresh water. The average 4-person family spends $1,500 each year on food that they throw away. And the big one up top, 40% of all food produced is never eaten. 40% of the food that we are growing in this country ends up in a landfill, just sitting there. Let's see. Now, when we talk about donate, nearly 800,000 South Carolinians are food insecure. So there are people out there that need this food. South Carolina produced 640,000 tons of food waste in 2016. These are just big numbers, and I see your faces and I see the impact that it has. So again, this is where I talk about waste is an out of sight, out of mind situation for us, and we need to have more of a connection and an understanding of what our waste stream is so that we can address it. Composting addresses it, at least for the food and paper waste. So this is what I was touching on before. So when you're composting, you address two global issues. Now our country, I just talked about our state a good bit and our country, but food waste is a global issue. There are people all around the world that are food insecure. So if we have this food sitting in landfills, it has a better place to be. The second issue that composting addresses is the state of our soil. Our soil is dying. It needs to be living. It needs to be healthy. It needs to be full of life and microorganisms, and it's not. The practices that we are using for farming now and just how we treat our soil is stripping it of organic matter. And so eventually we're not going to have soil that could sustain our food needs. The United Nations has projected we have 60 harvests left on the soil the way that we're treating it now in terms of our country. Yeah. So understanding soil health and the means of assessing it and managing it, that way you can optimize your soil and optimize its health. I love this idea. A fully functioning soil produces the maximum amount of products at the least cost. This is a huge idea because a lot of the time when we're talking about compost, the cost of our services or composting or recycling is a barrier. When you're using a natural method, it actually is the least expensive. It just may take time and effort up front. But long term, and I'll go over the different benefits of composting. Long term, it actually saves money and it's addressing needs. Soil will not work for you if you abuse it. Again, we want to grow our food. We need to treat the soil well. So 5 functions of a healthy soil. And throughout this, when you're looking at healthy soil and material that talks about healthy soil, they refer to organic matter. That is what compost is. It is organic matter. Regulating water. One of the benefits of compost is that it retains moisture. Now, for our backyards, that is a great thing. I love not watering as much as I used to, but think about a farmer who has an acre of land, who has 5 acres of land, who has 10 acres. What would that water retention save him, number 1, in irrigation, and number 2, in water that he needs? Water is something that is a necessary commodity, and it's a precious one. Sustaining plant life and animal life. Compost addresses this by feeding the ecosystem of the plant. And I'll go a little bit more into that, but the ecosystem of the plant needs that organic matter so as a part of their food, as a part of the way to sustain them. Filtering and buffering pollutants. There's research that is being done right now, specifically in Europe, that's really looking at plant diseases and the ability for compost to suppress them. There are certain diseases that just do not feel at home in a soil that has compost. There's more to that, but there's not really any data describing it yet. Cycling nutrients. So soil organic matter holds 10 to 1,000 times more water and nutrients than other materials. That's a big difference. That is a big difference, and that's really why I'm standing here in front of you. I don't think most people know that, and one of my jobs is to communicate this material so that we can all start to have better practices at home, at work, and within our communities. Physical stability and support. I work a lot with schools and elementary students. And one of my favorite questions to them is, if I take a shovel out to my backyard, to my red clay, and I try to put it in the ground, what will happen? And the most recent one that made me chuckle is, you'd fall over. Yeah, I would. I would. The shovel and me, I would completely fall over. It is just so hard. And we're asking roots of plants to grow in that hard soil. Compost creates air pockets and a structure that allows the roots to optimize their growth. So I like to play a game with the kids. I'll stand on one foot and I'll say, how secure am I if I try to balance? And like, oh, you're not secure at all. Yeah, okay, well, what happens if I really plant myself out like a really good root system? Can I be blown over or knocked or anything? And they'll look at me and say, no, that's exactly how you should be. That's the way roots need to be. And that's why compost, that's one of the reasons why when compost is in the soil, the plant can grow taller, stronger, and support more fruit or vegetables or flowers. It has a stronger base, and those roots can really get in and absorb what they need. Organic matter versus chemical fertilizer. Now, this is a question that I get a lot, especially from gardeners. So, both of them bring nutrients. Both of them have their roles. The thing about chemical fertilizer is that it's bringing nutrients directly to the plant. Sometimes in a concentration that is too high, so it can be damaging. The other thing about a chemical fertilizer is that it has a time limit. So once those nutrients are used, they're finished. It's either washing away in the rainwater or they're just all done. With compost, organic matter is a rebuilding agent. It regenerates, meaning when it supports the ecosystem of the plant, the ecosystem then supports the plant, and it's a continual process. So if you add compost to one area of your yard, those microorganisms are going to repopulate or regenerate that little bit of compost, and it'll just keep going. Leaves will fall, more organic matter will be there, they'll break that down, and it will just keep going and going and going. I like to think of, fertilizer maintains the status quo. Like the plants are healthy, they're good, but with compost, you're actually improving the health of the soil. I don't know if any of you have been to the urban farm at the Hub City Farmers Market, but Meg Whitley is the farmer in resident there. She does the instruction as well as runs all the projects. She says fertilizers are like going to the grocery store and getting one meal that you need right now versus stocking your fridge for the week's worth of meals. That's how she looks at fertilizer versus compost. This is just a visual of this ecosystem I keep talking about. Kids love this picture because they can recognize all these bugs on the bottom, but all of these microorganisms and bugs that we can see live in and under the ground. The organic matter is there in the form of leaves in this picture. Compost is the same thing, it's organic matter. So all of this supports the plant, and then the plant supports us. So it's all a part of the natural decomposition cycle, so that the organic matter from last season becomes the feeding agent or the supporting agent for next season's growth. So types of composting. There are so many different ways that you can do this, and the main two ingredients are food waste and yard waste. The other thing that you need is oxygen. That's basically it. It is a natural, completely natural process. So there are different methods here. The picture on the left, the reason why I like this picture, and there are definitely bins like this that are sold through the county or Lowe's or online, but it's basically you just add on top a layer of food waste, a layer of yard waste, a layer, and you just keep doing it. And then eventually you can see toward the bottom there's a little bit of compost soil at the base. That's just letting it happen slowly. The main reason you would use something like this is to contain it, number one, and number two, you want to divert your waste. This bottom picture with the piles is very common in community gardens and farms. It's a little bit of a larger system, and it says add to pile on the left. So that's where you would be adding, similar to the picture on the left, you'd be adding your food waste, you'd be adding your yard waste. And then once it got to a certain level, you would move it to the middle section where you'd close it off and just kind of let it decompose. You'd need to stir it every once in a while to get the oxygen in there, but you kind of just let it be so that it can do its work. And then the cell all the way on the right is where you would put the finished compost after it broke down. Now this process, if you're really, really good about turning it, you could get some finished soil in about 4 months. Mostly 6 months to a year is where you would be looking at to get any finished product. One of the reasons this is popular in community gardens and farms is because it is a little bit larger of a system, but they're also in it for the finished product. So this creates a little bit more of a finished product after the decomposition process. Worm bins are very popular for a controlled environment. And I love worm bins. I actually have one at my table today. It's a controlled space where you actually see the results of the decomposition. So you have, this one has, just like mine out on my table, it has shredded office paper and some fruit or vegetable clippings. Eggshells are great too. So you just mix that up, moisten it so that it's like a damp. If you can squeeze water out of the paper, you've got too much. If it just feels like a damp cloth, it's perfect. And red wiggler worms are the most popular type of worm to have in this worm bin. That's what I have outside. There are also night crawlers. But the thing about worms is you can see this process, and it's considered black gold because it is so concentrated. The negative to doing a worm bin is if you want the finished compost, you really need to be using it in an outside location because there's going to be worms in there. I mean, you have to, the separation process, worms do not like light and they like food. So you control their movement by where you shine light and where you put their food. So I guess on the right-hand side, you see a little bit more of the black castings. So I would put food on the left-hand side and maybe shade that half of the container so that light was directly shining on the part that I wanted to sift out. And then you literally scoop off the top inch and a half to get the castings off without any worms. I'm not the most patient person, so I literally take, maybe one of those under the bed Tupperware containers, Rubbermaid, that's what I'm looking for. I take one of those long ones and I'll spread it all out and I'll literally pick out the worms. I just don't want to wait. They would move, the shift takes about a day and a half from one side of the bin to the other in a way that you get enough worms out to really get the finished product. If you ever work with a worm casting, if you see a worm casting company, this is something that they are doing in a very methodical, constant way. I like, if I'm putting my worm castings on my garden beds outside, I'll put the worms. The worms are a good thing. There's actually a do-it-yourself method where you have a mini worm bin in your raised bed. So again, this is the regenerative aspect. So the worms will continue to eat the organic matter that's not fully broken down in your raised bed. So the more worms, the better, and if you have your garden outside. The tumbler is popular, this little black down below, because it's just like the bin on the left, but you don't have to stir it, you turn it. When you turn it, that's what rotates the material and brings the oxygen in. So it's taking, that turning process, or that stirring process, and making it into something that you wind. The black bucket in the middle is Atlas Organics' residential program, and I will talk about that in a few slides. But we offer doorstep pickup as well as drop-off locations for us to compost the material. Okay, so with Atlas Organics, I think that a big thing that is important to understand about why we're here and what we're doing, we as private individuals, so the team, the members of our team, identify that there's this need. There's the need to get the material out of the landfills. There's a need to address the health of our soil. There are cities and organizations all across the country that are creating composting services, large scale, to address this on a community level. That was not here 4 years ago. It's still not here. So as a private company, we are offering the ability for our customers and our partners to partake in this change until there's more understanding. We plan on being around for a really long time. So, but we want to build something bigger than ourselves. These issues are bigger than we are. They're bigger than our community is. And we want to help address that. To compost food residuals and yard debris into a valuable soil amendment. To educate others on sustainable practices. This is why I'm here. Again, there's the need. People need to understand the solution as well as why the solution needs to be. To provide a service and a feasible solution for all. To impact lives by building healthy soils, improve crop production, healthier landscapes, and conserve our environment. These are just values that each member of our team has. And we've decided collectively to come together, give it our all. Give it everything that we have every single day so that we can see these changes come to pass. And I think it's pretty amazing that we're starting here in Spartanburg and growing out. This is our team. You will see them around Spartanburg, I'm sure, if you like going to the co-op for lunch. Our two founders, Gary Neihart is on the left, Joseph McMillan is on the right. I'll get into the history a little bit, and I think another slide or two. But Jim Davis is from Spartanburg as well. Colin Hooks is our manager of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And that is myself. And then Alston Sanson is our operations manager. So the warehouse and the team that transfers all the compostable material is what he is in charge of. So this is the history. What's pretty cool about when I talk about our team, Joseph is a graduate of Wofford. His junior year at Wofford, he won the Entrepreneurial Award. That's that big check right there for his company that he started, Junk Matters. Junk Matters was part of the seed of Atlas Organics. At the same time, neither Gary or Joseph knew each other, but at the same time, Gary was helping the facilities team at Clemson build an aerated static pile system to address the entire university's waste. Then in 2013, Joseph started collecting food waste with Junk Matters. Before that, he was focused mainly on recycling. But in 2013, he expanded to include food residuals as well. 2013, Gary moved to California and worked for a large company, Vision Recycling, who had 7 different composting facilities around the Bay Area. So he got some really, really good on-the-ground training to see and seeing a large operation happen. 2014, there was a change in the laws in South Carolina. He was now able to start a composting facility, a commercial composting facility here. So Gary moved back to Greenville, where he was from, and they had a common friend introduce them. The joke is both Gary and Joseph say that they knew they were either going to meet their greatest partner or their biggest enemy. So I'm thankful that they talked it out, because that's why Atlas Organics is here. But because Gary was wanting to address the processing aspect of composting, he wanted to have the facility, and Joseph was already doing the hauling. It was the perfect match. So in 2014, Atlas Organics became what the company was. And then they worked hard to merge both of their efforts and raised funds through Venture South to support a composting facility in partnership with Greenville County, as well as expand to cover service in Columbia. So in 2016, our facility at Twin Chimneys opened, and we began a completely integrated business, meaning the second we pick up the waste, we see it through the entire process to where we're actually delivering it to the farm. And so you can see the beginning picture of the facility down there in the bottom left corner. Yeah. So just to give you the overall, this is what happens. So people have food and paper waste. They put it in one of our collection bins, whether it be the residential bucket, the commercial 64-gallon that's over by the food area, or you saw on the semi, we do have roll-off containers that can be filled as well. So we address any size of waste stream. We pick it up and deliver it to our facility. It goes through the composting process with the aerated static pile system, and then it is sold into the landscaping or agricultural markets within the community. I think that's a big part. This entire process happens locally, and it stays local. So I talked about what you needed in a backyard pile was fruit and vegetable waste and then yard waste. The nice thing about our commercial facility is we can expand the materials in which we collect. So with our process, we sanitize our piles. We keep the temperature above 135 degrees for 3 consecutive days. That is the regulation for sanitizing your compost pile, which allows us to take the meat. It allows us to take dairy products. I love, my children don't finish pasta with a whole bunch of olive oil. It goes in the compost. Anything that is food or paper. Our one restriction is that meat products need to be cooked, but other than that, you can put an entire pizza or a ham bone, whatever food and paper. So just to show you what actually would go to the landfill, and this is a sign that we use frequently in schools, plastics that are not recyclable, aluminum, styrofoam, Ziploc bags, and then glass, which is not pictured because it's not very common in our school systems. But you can see the next time you look at your plate, if you go out to eat or either way, you can see that the majority of what's on your plate is actually compostable waste. It includes your napkin. It includes your paper towels. If you use paper cups or paper plates, I love going to get my coffee at Little River because they use compostable lids. So that is a zero waste experience. Even if I have coffee left over, it is going in my compost house bucket. Starbucks too. I mean, a lot of places use wax paper, all those wax paper bags. That is completely compostable for us. So we really truly can and do address the largest source of waste. These are just some of our partners. What I wanted to show here was just the variety. You see things like Michelin. You see things like Lowe's grocery store. Chemtrade, Timken, EBP is in Chattanooga. TD Convention Center. They go through a lot with the different things that they offer their customers. What I love about Little River or, TD Convention Center, for instance, is they use compostable products. They've put so much time and effort into either purchasing paper products or the compostable plastic. And that allows them to really, we can almost take everything that they have. TD has some plastic containers, but they're recyclable. So pointing out that they are, number one, preventing their waste. They donate through soup kitchens and community partners, and then they use us as the last step, composting. It's pretty amazing. And it's actually not that hard. They just made the decision that it was important to them, and they were going to do it. I won't go through every single one here, but I like to point out those examples so that you can see how much is actually able to be diverted. I've mentioned education several times. I love education. This is something that it changes the way you go about your day when you see a child come up to the compost bin and say, "I'm ready to feed the plants." And it sounds corny when I say it, but when a 6-year-old is looking at me and saying, I want a pretty world. I want flowers. I want healthy food. Blueberries were the favorite in the last presentation I did. I had a picture of mounds of blueberries, and I said, "Do you want more blueberries?" They said, "Yes." So our younger generations understand the importance and the potential, and I think that it's very possible. These are high school students that are using a compost bin. Their school has reusable dinnerware. They use plastic dinnerware, so everything is either washed or in the compost bin. We did a waste audit with a middle school group. That was fun. The kids literally put on gloves all the way up to their elbows, and we dug through every single trash bin that was created at lunch that day. And they were able to identify what should have gone in the recycling, because this particular school has single stream recycling, what was supposed to be in the compost bin, and then what actually needed to go to the landfill. And one of the highlights for me, obviously, they saw that compostable waste was the heaviest and the largest volume. But what they also identified was that their peers were using plastic silverware more than the reusable that was there. Little cups for ketchup and condiments. Instead of putting it directly on their plate, they were using all these little teeny tiny pieces of plastic that weren't necessary. So that's actually what they took back to their school community. It was make better choices. Take the second to grab a piece of silverware versus plastic and just drop it off at the dish window. And that to me is education. That is something that they'll remember, and I'm not standing there telling them. So this is our Compost House program, and I mentioned it earlier as a service that we offer. So Atlas Organics started out addressing commercial-sized waste, so the 64-gallon bins. To have a sustainable, healthy lifestyle, you really need to be making good choices at work as well as at home. So last year, we started actually the end of 2016, we started the Compost House program. And we offer doorstep service either weekly or every other week. And we have a drop-off location as well. It's a membership program where your family or your household uses those black buckets to collect all your food and paper waste. And then each month, you earn 2 full buckets of finished compost. So it's all about making it accessible, easy, and affordable. I think that's the only way that we're going to make the large impact that we desire to. So this is a picture of our facility, probably about 6 months ago, actually. We're currently using 4 acres out of our 9 acres that's a part of our partnership. Those piles are about 20 feet deep. And so the process is, you can't really see probably very well from here, but they're pipes that go underneath each cell. So underneath each pile, there are 2 pipes that are connected to fans, and we blow air on a regulated schedule based on the temperature of the pile for the oxygen source. So we do not have 20 men out there stirring. That we have 1 man in charge of that facility every day. So he's handling and moving that material with a loader all day long, 5 days a week, sometimes 6. But so we have phase 1 and phase 2. We move it once simply to make sure that we've mixed it well. That's kind of key. We have a mixing pad toward the back where we mix the food and the yard waste. And as long as it's a cohesive pile, it will break down with that oxygen underneath. And then if you see down to the right here, you can kind of tell that it's a finer material in those piles. That's the finished compost. So that's the part that's actually broken down enough to the dimension that we decide and falls through the sifter. Everything else that hasn't gotten down to that point yet goes back into the system and just goes through again. So our process is 45 days. From the time that the material enters our facility to the time that it's screened and ready to be finished compost. We really take a natural process and do it in the most efficient way, giving it all the best circumstances. So our first year with our facility, we diverted almost 4.2 million pounds of food waste. Now, what I always like to talk about, and you can see the pipes a little bit, those green pipes, that's just the beginning of the process. But that 4 million pounds needed to be matched with 4 million pounds of yard waste. So our actual diversion of material that did not go to the landfill was 8 million pounds our first year. So you can see the difference 2016 to 2017. In 2017, we actually diverted 8 million pounds of food waste. Doubling that, it would be 16 million pounds of material. Happily, we last month diverted over 1 million pounds in the month of March. So of food waste. So again, double that to 2 million. So we are on an upward swing. We are addressing this. We are educating. We are doing everything we can to provide this service to every aspect. We service the Midlands of South Carolina north, and then western North Carolina, parts of Tennessee, and the tip of Georgia now. All coming to this one site for now. That will change. That will change very soon, but for now. We like to talk about growing pains. The benefit to our growth in our business is actually we're pushing our limits to where we actually need to grow even more. But we're in that area where we need just a little bit more to go the next step. But that's what business is all about. That's what your work is all about. Oh, wrong one, hold on. Okay, so we talked a lot about the benefits of compost. I just wanted to hit one of the things that we specify for our product is there are no biosolids. And we are STA certified. That means the U.S. Composting Council is testing our product for pathogens at least 4 times a year, at least every quarter, sometimes more. Specifically, we have organic farmers that are updating their organic certification. Clemson University has approved our product to be used on certified organic farms. Our food source constantly changes, so we're not able to be certified organic, but our product is able to be used on an organic farm. And so, yep. I said I'm approved by that. Yeah, stabilizes pH. I think I talked about some of that. Yeah, I think that I just wanted to show, this bottom picture is Spartanburg School District 6 farm. I just implemented in a Spartanburg District 6 school. So they will be a complete cycle from table to compost to farm to table. This is what we want all our schools to be doing. This is what we want our grocery stores to be. I think I mentioned to some of you, if you saw me at the table, the Hub City Co-op is that full cycle, Swamp Rabbit Cafe in Greenville. And there are probably plenty of more. Most of our customers buy from local farms. So I think as we try to address small business and local needs, this is a part of it. This is a part of us being intelligent and smart with our local waste stream to then fertilize or support the growth of what we need. Okay, I love this picture. I could talk to you all day long. I could tell you about all the benefits, but there's nothing like seeing a physical example. So the picture, I'll just say, both of these plants were planted at the exact same time. They're about 5 feet apart from each other and have the same sun and water. So the environment is controlled for both plants. The only difference was the plant on the right was given our compost, was given Atlas Organics compost. And this difference that you see is after 2 months. So compost really does support the optimum plant growth? What is the plant capable of? I like to think in these terms because I like to teach my children. I like to think of my own talents. What are we capable of? What is inside of us if we do the right things and have everything line up? This is what this plant was capable of.
And was the other plant just given regular fertilizer?
Nope.
So nothing
No.
at all?
Yep. Yep. No, we just strictly wanted to see compost-wise what happens when you add compost to the soil. It would be a good thing to test chemical fertilizer versus compost, but no, this shows actually what compost itself does. And then these are just pictures. So at this point, Atlas Organics has compost in bulk. You may see these cubic foot bags in nurseries around Spartanburg. And then Compost House, the compost comes back to you, 2 buckets a month. And that is it. If you please like us on social media and stay in touch so you know all the things that we're doing. But thank you for listening.